Good afternoon and welcome to The Big Show. The Big Show comes at you every day right about this time, although tomorrow will be a little bit earlier when we do the show, as we will do it at 4 o'clock, and then we will probably tomorrow really get into the fact that the Steelers have to play another game. And so, we'll see where they're at. And hopefully maybe we'll see a couple more of the regulars play. It doesn't sound like we're going to see many more of the regulars than we did the first game, but we'll see. And I think that's what is coming up tomorrow. But, of course, today it's one of those things where yet another Steeler made a very bold statement. And generally, this guy doesn't say many things like this. But this is what Mike Tomlin had to say about his defense. Are you ready? We feel really good about the prospects of this group. We got to write that story, but we've got enough talent. We've got enough schematics to do big things. And when I say big things, I'm talking about historic things. Now, that could be interpreted a lot of ways, obviously, right? That could absolutely be interpreted a lot of ways. You could interpret that to mean that he's just saying he thinks the defense is going to be really good, but he's talking about but he's talking about historic. This is basically one of those situations where I would tell you that, I kind of like his confidence. Maybe it's overconfidence. I'm not sure. But either way, it's going to be very, very, very interesting in so many ways to kind of really figure out what he means. Because I think that it's going to be real important to figure out where this defense is strong enough and where it might not be strong enough. That's what I would tell you. And I think that this defense maybe has a chance to be historic. Maybe. I doubt it. Here's the thing. Okay, now we've gotten through all of that. Let's really be realistic here. Number one, I don't know exactly where the depth is on this defense. I just don't. I think that the defense can be really good. But if there's a couple of injuries, I don't know where there's areas they can really take more than one or two injuries. The secondary's got seemingly enough players, but I have to believe that the drop between Joey Porter and Jalen Ramsey and whoever the next corner is, I guess it'd be Darius Slay or, Beanie Bishop or whoever it's going to be. Boy, it feels like you're losing a lot if you lose one of those two corners for any amount of time. I think the inside linebackers probably go too deep in Payton Wilson, right? And Patrick Queen, probably too deep. I'm not sure what you're going to get from the guys behind those guys, although Cole Holcomb is allegedly having a really good camp. Again, one of my biggest problems with the way that we cover camp is everybody's having a great camp if you listen to the guys that cover it. And it's no disrespect to them, but I've covered football. I covered football for like 15 years. You basically have to come up with storylines every single day. And you basically have to turn, any development that might be positive into something that's really big. Well, you know what? That's how you end up with every single person is playing well in camp. Everyone is great in camp. My favorite one is everyone is in the best shape of their lives. And, when you cover college football, it's kind of funny when you cover college football. So every, I don't know, January or whatever, December, a lot of teams have coaching staff changes or they make some changes, right? So, and Pitt did this 3 or 4 times where they changed strength and conditioning coaches. So they had, a couple of months of the winter program to get this new strength and conditioning guy to put his new program in. And then, we would get a chance to talk to them, say in March when spring football was getting ready to start. And invariably, it was, we're in the best shape of our lives. This guy, his methods are unbelievable compared to the last guy. What we're doing now is so much more advanced. It's so much better. We're going to be so much better because we're in such great shape. That's always my favorite one. The best shape of our lives. The bottom line is there's only so many different ways you can do strength and conditioning. And I don't, these guys are all gurus and they've all got their methods and we've seen all kinds of craziness. At the end of the day, how many different methods can you really use? And I got to believe if you're a strength and conditioning coach and, at Division I college of football or in the NFL, you probably have an idea what you're doing. Secondly, I don't even know what best shape of your life means. I mean, I don't know. I've lost some weight, right? I used to be a fat ass, but now kind of small. Maybe I could tell you I'm in the best shape of my life. But this is what you get out of camp. Everybody's doing great. But Cole Holcomb is a guy who allegedly is doing really, really well. So maybe he's a third option at middle line, inside linebacker, whatever we're going to call those two guys, whatever. Your outside linebackers, you've got Watt and Highsmith, who's been banged up, by the way, and Herbig. So you have a little room for error, but I don't know how much. And I still think the defensive line is not deep enough. I mean, I think, Keanu Benton and Derrick Harmon and Cam Heyward probably are good enough, especially if Derrick Harmon is who we think he is. But, big but, always, we have to see it. He's a rookie. Keanu Benton's pretty good. Cam Heyward's pretty good, obviously. But it's the guys behind them that really scare you. And that's why when I hear him say this defense is going to has a chance to be historic, I mean, yeah, they do. But they really need to stay healthy, more so than a lot of defenses of the past. And right now you've got Darius Slay, Alex Highsmith, and Joey Porter all nursing injuries. And we haven't even really gotten started yet. So now you have to figure out what's going to be next. What is going to be next? And whatever it's going to be, I think that you have to really understand that if the Steelers are going to be a historic, an elite, a really, really incredibly good defense, if they're going to be any of that, they have to stay healthy. Because I just don't think they have enough depth. I mean, I look at the guys that are backups. Isaiah Loudermilk is probably your next defensive lineman. He's the guy that people are talking about. He's not having a great camp. And quite frankly, he's a guy that if he has to play more than 7 or 8 snaps in a game, probably it's not good for you. Yeah, Black. Apparently, everyone loves his name, and so he's like a little bit of a folk hero. I mean, come on. At linebacker, you've got Jack Sawyer, who people are kind of falling in love with. I think, but behind Queen and Wilson, you've got Malik Harrison and Devin Harper and Mark Robinson. If Cole Holcomb isn't the guy they think he is. So I'm just looking at this list and what the depth actually is. And even in the secondary, again, if you look at the secondary, I mean, you've got Jalen Ramsey and Joey Porter Jr. You've got 2 really good, guys, you're good players sort of manning your corner spots. But behind them, I'm just not sure what you really have. I'm just not sure what you really have. I think that it's just one of those things where I feel like historic is probably a strong word, but if they're going to be historic, that tells me that they better stay healthy. I got into it today on social media with some goofballs about Mike Tomlin. You know, I this whole thing about being a hater. Be a hater. You're a hater. I figured out, and I'm not the smartest guy out there, but I figured this out. You're only a hater if you're critiquing or criticizing one of the favored sons of a certain group in the media or whatever. You know, you can criticize certain people and certain, for instance, music groups and certain television shows, and you can criticize certain athletes, but there's a group that if you do it, you're called a hater. And Tomlin is absolutely in that group where you are not allowed to criticize him without being called a hater. You're a hater. You're a hater. You're a hater. Meanwhile, you can rip the hell out of John Harbaugh. You can criticize him, and quite frankly, his profile ain't that much different than Tomlin's. The only difference is he's actually won a playoff game in the last 7 or 8 years. But at the end of the day, you can rip John Harbaugh, and you're just criticizing him, and it's fair comment and criticism. But if you rip Mike Tomlin, you're a hater. Why is that? What are we talking about here? I don't know. Can you figure that one out? I have theories, but there's certain people, there are groups, whatever, that you can or cannot criticize. And if you do, you're a hater, even though the criticism is fair. I've said this many times, and I'll say it again. I'd be willing to bet that over the last 4, 5, 6 years, John Harbaugh, Sean McDermott, and Mike Tomlin are 3 of the winningest coaches in the NFL without even looking it up. Without even looking it up. I'd be willing to bet in the last 5 or 6 years. Would you concede that? That, Sean McDermott, in fact, I saw something the other day, if I'm not mistaken, the Bills under Sean McDermott over the last 5 years, I think, have won the most games except for the most games of any team not named Kansas City, actually. Sean McDermott, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh are 3 coaches that are really successful. All 3 of them have their teams in the playoffs pretty much every year. All 3 of them are always hailed as culture guys. They're a culture guy. He's a culture guy. Well, he's a culture guy. I mean, everyone wants to play for him because he's a culture guy. I mean, John Hart, he's a culture guy. They're a culture. Ravens, they win. You just plug anyone in because it's a culture. Mike Tomlin, he's a culture guy. McDermott's changed the culture in Buffalo, all this other stuff. Okay. First of all, can I just say this? Culture is nonsense. I mean, when they're talking about culture, they're talking out of their ass. And I mean that. Because the reality is culture is so overrated and so overstated. You know what? Some of the most dysfunctional teams in the history of sports, right, have won championships. And some of the teams that absolutely hated each other and wanted to fight outside their own locker room every game, guess what? They've won championships. And some of the other teams that sat in their locker room smoking a peace pipe and singing Kumbaya, guess what? They couldn't win a game. Culture to me is overrated. It's a which came first, the chicken or the egg type of thing. Does winning make culture? Or does culture make winning? You figure it out. Either way, I think it's ridiculous to me that there's certain coaches you're allowed to critique and others that you're not. And when you critique them, I mean, for instance, Andy Reid, could we all agree that Andy Reid has had a much better career than Mike Tomlin? Andy Reid gets criticized a lot. Nobody ever says, well, you're a hater. It's Tomlin. Oh, you're a hater. What does that mean? The bottom line, there are fair criticisms of all of these guys. And quite frankly, I'll say it. If I'm Buffalo and the Bills, if I'm the owner of the Bills and they do not get to the Super Bowl, I'm firing Sean McDermott and hiring somebody else. You say, oh, but Paul, I mean, he's won 65 games in the last. Doesn't matter. You got Josh Allen in his prime, and you've got a team that has, in the last 2 years or 3 years, been good enough to win it, and they haven't gotten there. Tell you a guy that wants to get back into coaching, I'd hire it, worked before, John Gruden. Why not? Somebody like that with an edge. Because my impression of the Bills are they're always just a little too soft for me. Not Josh Allen. I love him. He's a hard-nosed guy. He's one of my – I love that guy. But the Bills on defense are always a little too soft for me. You know, they play, kind of a passive defense, which works, and usually they're pretty good at yards against or whatever, but they're just not a team that lines up and knocks you in the mouth. And I think that's part of their problem. But I'd fire Sean McDermott in a heartbeat if they don't get to the Super Bowl this year, unless, if Josh Allen gets hurt, obviously it's different. But my point is, John Harbaugh, I might have the same standard for him. You got Lamar Jackson. You better at least get to the AFC Championship game this year. And if you go there and you lose because, it looks like you made a bunch of mistakes, we're firing you. Bam. Bye. Tomlin, I don't know if he should have to win the Super Bowl, but he's got to get out of the first round. I mean, this Marvin Lewis thing where he doesn't ever win playoff games anymore, sooner or later, you got to get rid of it. And, I have people that attack me because I have the audacity to say that. I'm not being a hater. Just being real. Just be real. We don't have to sit here and lie to each other. Just be real. The longest stretch the Steelers have ever gone since 1969, when Chuck Noll was hired, of not winning a playoff game is right now. 8 seasons. It had never gotten to 5 before that. Not 5. It's now at 8. But if you remember, but Paul, he won a Super Bowl. Yeah, like I said to somebody today, that Super Bowl's old enough to join the Army right now. That's how long ago it was. At some point, you kind of say, you know what? It doesn't give you a lifetime pass. Good coaches have been fired before. Remember when Tampa fired Tony Dungy? And it was, cause for, a meltdown among national media types and all kinds of outrage. They hired John Gruden and win a Super Bowl. Baltimore fired Brian Billick. Hired John Harbaugh, won a Super Bowl. I mean, I could go down the list. Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl, got fired. They hired LaFleur, Matt LaFleur, whatever his name is. And guess what? All he's done is had like the best record in football for like the last 5 or 6 years, and that's post Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I could go on and on and on where, this idea that you can't fire a good coach that won a Super Bowl because you can't replace him. The greatest example to me are the Eagles, who've now won 2 Super Bowls in the 7 or 8 years with 2 different coaches. And they've been and they were at a third. They were in a third Super Bowl in that time as well. And oh, by the way, Andy Reid went to, I think, was it 5 or 6 NFC championship games when he was in Philadelphia, won a bunch of playoff games, got to the playoffs pretty much every single year, right? And there was a point when they decided, well, I don't know, he ain't going to get it done for us. And they fired him. And like I said, since they fired him, they've been to 2 Super Bowls and won a third. They've won 2 Super Bowls and they've been to a third. So, again, and then what happened with Andy Reid? Yeah, he's a really good coach. He went to Kansas City, and obviously he's done very well there. Tony Dungy, he got fired, went to the Colts, and he won a Super Bowl with the Colts. Probably should have won more than one, but he won a Super Bowl with the Colts. So, this thing where, well, if you fire Mike Tomlin, somebody's going to snap him up in 35 seconds. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to anything in sports. Worry about your damn team. Right? Remember when Roy Williams and Coach K got into it, and Coach K wanted to lecture Roy Williams about, his players fouling too much or whatever it was, and Roy Williams told him to go take a hike and basically said, worry about your own damn team. That's what you should do. Worry about your own damn team. If you move on from Mike Tomlin and he goes to the Rams and wins 17 Super Bowls there, who cares as long as you get the right guy? It's like this thing we do with baseball trades in this town. Everybody's so concerned about the prospects that we're sending out, which is why these teams the Pirates never trade prospects, or almost rarely ever trade prospects. Well, what if he becomes the next Mike Trout? What if he becomes the next Ohtani? Well, guess what? Hopefully you got enough for him. But you can't worry about what you're giving away. You got to worry about what are you getting. I remember, when the Pirates made a couple of deals at the trade deadline in, was it 2013 or 15? They made a couple of deadline deals. People were concerned because they gave up too much. Well, they got to the playoffs. So who cares? I remember when people were talking about the Rams. When they basically signed all those guys for all that money, it was like, their cap is going to be terrible in 2 years. They're going to have to trade these guys. Guess what? They win a Super Bowl. Nobody cares that, the next year they had to rip the team apart. So to me, if you're going to move on from Mike Tomlin, okay, if you're going to move on from Mike Tomlin, you need to move on and not worry about it, right? It's just one of those things where I think the discussion around him has become absolutely stupid. And I mean that. Absolutely stupid. I mean, it's really, really, really kind of silly to me that anytime you suggest, okay, that there needs to be a move made, that all of a sudden, you're shouted down and you're talked about as some sort of, some sort of a hater. But just for clarity's sake, active head coaches, the three with the most wins, Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh. Two other guys, Pete Carroll, who was fired, by the way, Sean Payton, are next. Then Sean McDermott is next. Those guys and Sean McVay. Those guys have won the most games of all of the active coaches. And three of them I would consider moving on from, to be honest. And a fourth, Pete Carroll, his team did move on from. That's where I would tell you. That's where it goes from. So anyway, it's just one of those things where it is going to basically be, funny to see. It's going to basically be funny to see if they don't win a playoff game, what will be the reason? They've changed coaches. They've changed coordinators. They've changed players. They've changed assistant coaches. They've changed general managers. They've changed quarterbacks multiple times. And guess what? There's one constant in all of it, and it's been Mike Tomlin. So you're not a hater if you suggest that, hey, you know what? you're not a hater, if you suggest that maybe something more needs to happen here before, next year, or maybe it's time to move on from Mike Tomlin. And again, I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him to do well. I like Mike Tomlin. I think he's good in so many ways for the Steelers. I think he's a great ambassador. I think there's so many things about him. Good football guy, good man, good role model, all that good stuff. Players seem to like him. But in the NFL, you're running the NFL. You're running an NFL team. You are playing to win. That should be your only goal. Winning. Period. Should be your only goal. And I think that's where it sort of loses something for me when we start talking about all these other accolades and all these other things. It gets a little bit ridiculous. By the way, the game is always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's home of 80-cent wings. Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So if you see Archie's, say hello. If you get down to Archie's, say hello. Tell them we sent you. Try, obviously, some of the wings, which are unbelievable, but also try the grilled cheese sandwich, which I'm sure if you like grilled cheese sandwiches, you'll love the one that's named after me at Archie's. Now then, a couple more minutes. Let's talk about the disaster that is your Pittsburgh Pirates. I can't even explain to you how bad they've been in the last 4 games. I'll just quantify it for you. How about that? As they lost today against Milwaukee, 12-5, 47-14 is what they've been outscored their last 4 games. 47-14. Not even close. And oh, by the way, Milwaukee, they're a small market too. They're a team that allegedly has all the handcuffs that the Pirates have on them. But guess what? They figured out how to win. They figured out a formula how to pay people. They figured out a formula of how to put together a team that, can compete, even though, let me look to see where they're at right now, even though their payroll is, let's see, 113 million. Wait, their active payroll is $68 million. Pirates are $61 million. $68 million is their active payroll. Think about that. Now, where there's a separation between them and the Pirates, they spend about $30 million more in their total allocations. But as far as their active payroll right now, their active payroll is $7 million more than the Pirates, and yet they have 75 wins, and the Pirates have 50 wins, or 51 wins. And here's the thing. I'll spot you Christian Yelich and Freddie Peralta. Jose Quintana played here. William Contreras, you remember him from all those years when he played for the Cubs. I'll give you all those guys' names. Oh, and Quinn Priester, who played here. Now name another Brewer for me. It's not about going out and getting stars. It really isn't. It's about good management, drafting well, developing well, signing good players, finding diamonds in the rough that are actually diamonds in the rough. Finding a good balance of veterans and young people. That's what you have to do. And if you have limited resources, you have to make sure you maximize your resources. And don't waste them. Don't spend $11 million on Aroldis Chapman last year, a guy who was actually pretty useless on a team that was terrible. And don't get me wrong, he had a good year for them, but they didn't need him. They could have used that money elsewhere. And now they've got, 15 million or 16 million or whatever it is, 18 million tied up in Brian Reynolds, who can't play anymore. I'm just saying, you better get it right. Anyway, tomorrow, 4 o'clock, we'll do it. We'll preview the Steelers playoff exhibition game this weekend, and we will get you ready for many, many other things that are going on here in the world of sports.